Why do so many people feel the need to shift out of their 9 to 5 after a spiritual awakening, or leave behind their career that they were so happy with for such a long period of their life? Because a spiritual awakening really shifts things for you and really puts things into perspective. And so in this video, I really want to cover this, because if this is something you're going through right now, or you anticipate that, this might be a change and shift and transition you might need to make later on your spiritual awakening journey, this can be really helpful to help you understand what you're really going through and help you process this decision so that you can do it with more ease. Now, I want to start off by saying, if you're somebody that's really passionate still about your 9 to 5 after spiritual awakening, or you still love your career the same way, that's absolutely okay. What's important to recognize here, though, is that the reason why so many people make a shift after their spiritual awakening out of their 9 to 5s or out of their careers is because there is no longer that fear of instability, that, lack mindset they might have been experiencing prior to their awakening. An awakening really shifts your awareness. It shifts your perspective on life. You move away from the egoic identity that you've built for yourself for so many years. And so really, I want you to think about your actual body as, in terms of higher and lower states of consciousness. We know that if we are operating from, fear, lack, worrying about any sort of insecurity, any sort of instability, we are operating from our lower 3 chakras, which is your root, your sacral, and your solar plexus. And so most people are operating from those 3 chakras, and therefore they think about life and they make decisions in life based on their conditioning, based on their fears, based on not being okay with the unknown. Now, what really happens when you go through a spiritual awakening? You go through a very long, possibly maybe multiple times, a dark night of the soul. And what does the dark night of the soul really teach you? It brings you back to the present moment. If we take a look at fear, what does that really have to do with? Fear has to do with either something you've learned about from past, things that have happened to maybe your family, people outside of yourself, what you've seen on the news, what you've seen in society, or you're worried about something that could go wrong in the future. But if we bring yourself back to, just the present moment, is there anything to fear about the present moment? One would probably say no. And so the dark night as a soul actually anchors you into the present moment, where you start living by and living through that state of awareness, starting to bring yourself not from, looking into the past, not worrying about the future, but being anchored into the present moment. And therefore, as you go through the ego identity death, you also find that those labels that you created, all that, worry about stability, that no longer exists. And so if that is the truth, then what ends up happening after a spiritual awakening is you're no longer taking a look at your 9 to 5 or your career through that lens. It's almost like an upgrade on your prescription, saying that, oh my God, I have so much more clarity now. I am not thinking through those decisions, that conditioning through my family, through schooling, through, whatever made you choose the career that you chose, or the, 9 to 5 that you're doing, probably came from having a certain amount of money, not, really thinking about your joys, your true passions, which is now a possibility. So what really is taking place when you go through a spiritual awakening is you're moving away and breaking free from those lower 3 chakras into your higher chakras. And as you do that, you are now moving into more possibilities that are open to you, for you to create a new reality, for you to experience something different. The more divine energy that flows through you allows you to experience something totally different. Like I said, Your prescription has now changed. So therefore, if that's the case, you are going to see the world very differently. And therefore, that 9 to 5, where you did the same thing repetitively every single day, doesn't give you that same joy anymore. And you're also not, held down by that limitation. Maybe I don't want to do the same thing, every single day anymore. I want to explore something new. So those possibilities and avenues start opening up to you, and therefore you're ready to make that shift. If fear is no longer holding you back, then you're ready to step into the faith. If you are not worried about what's going to happen next, then you're ready to explore the unknown. So that is why people actually make this shift, moving away from the careers that they've held on to. They were passionate about them, and it was okay for that time being, because that limitation, that scarcity mindset, those values are now shifting. And therefore, you look to align yourself with something else that's more meaningful, something that's more soulful, something that's more full of opportunity, something that really brings you life. And there's one thing more to keep in mind here, is God is living within you. And as you start to explore those higher states of consciousness and more divine energy is flowing through you, when you experience joy, God is experiencing that joy through you. And therefore, that is why it's so important and so helpful when you really go after doing something, from that point on, after your spiritual awakening journey, that really brings you joy. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope this was helpful. God bless.